Hello, welcome back to the latest episode of You Are My Borough. Myself, Dom Shaw, Scott Wilson, both of the Northern Echo. And it's time, unfortunately, for our season debrief, because we were hoping last week when we spoke with Andy Turner from Coventry Live that we'd be looking forward to a playoff semi-final and previewing what's to come in May. But unfortunately, that's not the case. Saturday didn't go to plan for Borough. The season ended with a 10th place finish, missing out on the top six by 4 points. We're going to analyse what went wrong the final day, but we'll just kind of gloss over that. I don't think we need to gloss over the full ins and outs.
Yeah.
But I think most importantly, talk about what comes next, the future, what the summer looks like now, what the conversations that are now taking place at Borough, and how the summer is going to play out. Overriding feeling disappointment, Scott, but kind of inevitable disappointment. I think the fear on Saturday was going to play out exactly as it played out.
I think if the last few vids, we've kind of tried to keep a bit of optimism there, haven't we? And there's been a little bit of hope in the fan base, but I think ultimately everybody, and I think I would even include the most ardent Borough fans in this, have sensed that this was coming, wasn't there? I don't think there was ever a real belief that this Borough side were going to get themselves in the playoffs and really threaten to get promoted. And the game at Coventry just summed up, like you said, really what we've seen from Borough in most of the games this season. Did all right for a period. Didn't really ever look like scoring. I mean, I know Finn Azaz has that shot that's turned around the post. It's a really good save, to be fair, from Ben Wilson. But there was never a real head of steam behind Borough. You never felt that a goal was kind of inevitable. Then they give away another pretty soft goal on the stroke of half time. Illing Jr. doesn't close down Sakamoto when he crosses it. Howson stands off Radoni, lets him head it in. Can Borough then get back into it? They kind of huff and puff a little bit, but never really look like doing anything. Again, Carrick kind of make changes, but no changes that were going to really radically affect the way the game was going. Certainly nothing kind of tactical or structural, really. And then obviously Coventry get the second goal just to put it to bed right near the end. So very much the story of the season. I thought Coventry played well. I didn't think they were exceptional, but I thought they were the better side on the day. There was a real energy around the CBS arena. I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens there between them and Sunderland. But in terms of a Borough point of view, all a bit predictable, really, wasn't it?
Right then, here we go. And I know for a fact the answer is going to be to this, how long have you got? But the aim this season was promotion.
Yeah.
Borough finished 10th, 4 points adrift, and have really felt like outsiders or have been playing catch up over the course of the second half of the season at least. Why did Borough's season not go to plan? Why did Borough miss out on the top six and promotion this season?
So I think we have to say that selling Latalath and Doak getting injured were big factors. Now they weren't the only factors, and prior to those two things happening, I don't think it looked like Borough were nailed on to win promotion. But they were in and around the top six, weren't they? They were sixth when Latalath was sold, and clearly the January recruitment window wasn't good enough. And then Doak gets injured pretty soon or around the same time. And you lose your main creative outlet. So that is mitigation. Both of those things went against Borough. I fully understand why the club sold Latalath. I stand by the fact that as a championship club without parachute payments, I don't think you can turn down £22.5 million for anybody. But the January attempts to plug that gap clearly were ineffectual. But it's deeper rooted than that, isn't it? Just to say that that's the excuse. That's the reason. I don't think that washes, because all season long, Borough haven't really been the sum of their parts. I stand by the fact that this squad is a pretty decent squad. Now, as the season's gone on, it's probably become apparent that there's weaknesses in certain areas, and we'll get to that, I'm sure. But I still come back to the fact that man for man, this squad's better than Millwall's. I mean, Millwall are effectively Borough's B team, aren't they? With Josh Coburn and George Saville and all of that going on there. This squad's better than Blackburn. And Middlesbrough are a stable football club. Blackburn clearly aren't. They should not be finishing below those two teams. So
I think Borough's squad's better than Bristol City's.
Yeah. I wouldn't disagree with that. I really wouldn't disagree with that. So have the players underperformed? Yes. I think there's definitely players within that squad who need to take a long, hard look at the mirror because they've just not been good enough. Has Michael Carrick's management been an issue? Yes. I don't think, a lot of the problems that we've talked about, not changing enough, in-game changes, pretty nondescript. Every time Boro have been under the cosh this season, it's felt like they've been unable to turn it around. Tactical inflexibility, I think that is an issue. The backroom staff around him, was losing Aaron Danks in the summer a major blow? I think in hindsight, yes. The decision to replace, not replace him like for like, but to bring in Graham Carrick, I mean, that looks ill-advised now, doesn't it? At the best, I think. So I think the back room is something you really have to look at. As ever with these things, there's lots and lots of different factors. But they've, put together, they've ensured that Boro have ended up underperforming. And I think it is underperforming. I think it is a disappointment. At the start of the season, Michael Carrick said this is the best squad I've had during my time here. Now, we can argue the toss about that, but he felt it. I think at the time, most of us felt he was probably about right. And yet, they've finished outside the playoff. And the worry is that in the 3 seasons now under Carrick, certainly in terms of just the simple measure of league position, it's regression every year, isn't it? And that's got to be a big worry.
And when you talk about the many factors or the factors to consider, attention inevitably turns to what happens next. And I think, we've both talked to plenty of Boro fans this week, and the question is right now, what is Michael Carrick's job safe? What happens this summer? That is now what people are talking about, isn't it? It already feels like we need to draw a line under that season, learn from it, use the experiences from it, but discuss what happens next and come back stronger next season. So what happens next? The noise coming out of Boro this week is that there will be no snap decision. They won't make what was described as any knee-jerk decisions, knee-jerk reactions at the end of the season. Instead, they'll take stock and assess all those factors that you discussed there. And one of the key messages yesterday from a conversation I had was, this isn't about scapegoating a person. Michael Carrick. The disappointment of the season is not down to one man or one factor. There are a number of factors. So what does that mean for the future, do you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, you make a good point, because when I was leaving Coventry on Saturday, I was kind of thinking, it was obviously a bank holiday Monday, wasn't it? I'm thinking Tuesday morning, are we going to get the indications that the press release is going to drop? It's going to be on the website. Michael Carrick's being sacked. Search for a new manager begins. Had that happened, I personally don't really think that. I mean, clearly Carrick would have complaints, but he could have any complaints, really. Do you know what I mean? I think he's underperformed, but there are excuses for that. I think the fact that we're recording this on Thursday morning. Clearly, Michael Carrick's still in his job. Like you say, the very strong indications from pretty much, the people who matter at Boro are that, exactly as you've said, they don't want to use Michael Carrick as a scapegoat. In some ways, they see firing Carrick as the easy option, if you like. Actually, they want to dig deeper than that. They want to see why this has gone wrong. And as we know from 2 or 3 months ago, Steve Gibson, I think, fundamentally, deep down, doesn't want to get rid of Michael Carrick. He wants Michael Carrick to work. He likes what he offers as Middlesbrough manager. I think he hugely respects Carrick as a person, as a figurehead. And so I think all of that is playing into this, isn't it? Steve Gibson, ultimately, as we know, is the guy who will make the decision. Yes, there'll be input from the likes of Neil Bowser, the likes of Kieran Scott, but ultimately it will be Gibson's decision, as it was 2 or 3 months ago. Back then, he clearly wanted to back Carrick. He wanted to give him every opportunity to succeed. What's changed since then? Well, Boro have obviously missed out, but probably felt at the time that was the likeliest scenario anyway. So in some respects, I guess, not an awful lot has changed. So if they were going to back him then, they're probably going to back him now. I mean, clearly, the longer this goes on, the less likely it is, I think, that Michael Carrick is removed from his position. So if we get to say next week and nothing's changed, and all the indications are that we're likely to do that, then I think it becomes more and more probable that Michael Carrick is still going to be Boro's head coach come the start of next season.
And with that in mind, if that is the case, as you say there, as probably looks increasingly likely, what does Carrick need to address? What are the issues that Carrick? Because what the message is this week is that we're not accepting the season that's gone. It was hugely disappointing. The aim was promotion. Boro said that on and off the record. They felt that they had a squad that was capable of winning promotion, and they identified this season as an opportunity. Now, it's a bit difficult to assess the championship this season because you've got two teams finishing on 100 points. I think it's the first time ever that two teams have finished on 100 points. But the team that finished sixth have the lowest points tally since 2013, which was also 68 points. I think it was Leicester that season. Yeah. So Boro are probably never going to have a better opportunity to finish in the top six. But it would have been a huge ask to finish in the top two. Now, that's probably a conversation for another day. And all I think it does is emphasize this feeling that the gulf is getting bigger between the Premier League and the top end of the Championship. But beneath the top three, Sunderland started like a house on fire, but have been really poor since February, March onwards. They go into the playoffs, bottom of the form table, having lost 5. Bristol City are in on 68 points, having stuttered. Coventry haven't won away in God knows how long. Millwall are flawed. Blackburn were a crisis club a few weeks ago. So the opportunity is there. And the opportunity was there. It's not a case of, I guess, brushing under the carpet what has gone before. They want to get to the bottom of the issues that they feel has plagued them this year, that they feel has contributed to them missing out. If Carrick is to stay in, though, what are the main issues he needs to address?
So I think there's two elements to what kind of Carrick's going to be tackling and what he's going to need to do. And I'd be interested to see what you think of this. One is the football side of it, which is how does he make this squad, this team better? Well, recruitment's clearly one massive avenue to be able to do that. So, I'm sure we'll get into that in more detail in a second, but recruitment is clearly going to be massive this summer. I think you can make the argument that prior to January, the last 2 or 3 windows had been pretty successful for Boro. I mean, purely by the money that's been brought in through Morgan Rogers and Emmanuel Latalath. Well, identifying those players and then being able to sell them at a massive profit, which I know fans don't necessarily want to hear that, but that is important for a club like Boro to remain to a degree financially solvent and try not be utterly reliant on Steve Gibson's largesse. So that's been important. But clearly January was a bad window and pretty much everything Boro tried to do there backfired. So lessons have to be learned from that. And then also how he manages his squad, how he sets them up tactically, how he manages in game. I think all of that has to be looked at. But then parallel to that, or along with that, I do think now that Michael Carrick's going to have to look at his relationship with the Boro fans and how he's coming over, because that's going to be massive now. If Michael Carrick is still the manager, then he needs to get the club and the fan base back around that, because while there's been no outright hostility to Carrick, there's been no we want Carrick out, there's been no you don't know what you're doing, there's been none of that. I think it's fair to say that in the last month, there's been a gradual shift away from a real pro-Carrick majority to, how would you put it? Certainly skepticism within the fan base. I think increasingly fans are now questioning whether or not Michael Carrick is the right man or not. And I think quite a few have concluded that he isn't. So he's got to repair that relationship. And that comes down to how he conducts himself, his answers in press conferences, his touchline interviews with Mark Drury, all that kind of side of it. Because rightly or wrongly, and Carrick would flatly deny this, and I'm not disputing it in some ways, but I think there is a perception now that he's not what Boro need. He's not the leader that Boro need. Is his heart actually in this? Will he be off the first time a different job offer comes along? What if he doesn't genuinely believe it? Why should the fans genuinely believe it? I think all of that is going to be important this summer, because that's a narrative he needs to shift.
It's interesting.
Do you think that's fair?
Well, I think the communication side of things. So, like, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn here, but when the Boro did those like on the road events where they went to Beechwood and Easterside Club and they went to the Lakes Club in Redcar, both really good nights. Like the fans there seemed to really enjoyed it. Both packed out, good atmosphere, and particularly in the first one, in both, but particularly in the first one at Beechwood and Easterside, I thought Carrick was great. I saw a side of him that I've never seen before. Now I realise that we're not friends with Michael Carrick. You know what I mean? We go to or he doesn't see us as friends. You know, we're there to ask him questions when we go to a press conference. But in press conferences, I've not seen that relaxed, funny side to him where he was like taking the mick out the players a little bit, one-liners, really relaxed. And I came away from there thinking, I wish I'd seen more of that side of him. And I think he'd benefit from showing that side of him a little bit more. Now, that's absolutely nothing against him. I just think, and it goes back to, I think, his football upbringing, being at Man United for so long, that maybe the instinctive reaction in press conferences is to not try and give too much away. I mean, we laugh and joke and here, don't we, about the injuries and how we were second guessing what he's going to say with injuries. But so he's not going to come in. Not everyone's Tony Mowbray. And I realise, yes, there's a selfish element of this from our point of view. We'd love to go and get, loads of colour every single week and have him purring about this subject and that subject. That's never going to be the case for Michael Carrick. That's absolutely fine. And I realise there are certain subjects that he's never going to disclose all on. But I do think he'd benefit from maybe showing that side of himself.
And I think a big issue with it from the fans' point of view as well is, and again, we're coming at this from journalists, so I'd be really interested. Comment on this. Let us know on the vid on the podcast platforms. Let us know, as diehard Boro fans, what you think about this and whether we're over egging it all. But I think 3 years into Michael Carrick now, his unwillingness to be critical of anything or anybody jars. I don't think Boro fans want to hear Michael Carrick backing his players blindly and saying everything's all right, we're doing what we want us to do, we're playing great football. Well, you've just lost at home to Swansea, you've just lost at home to Stoke, whatever. Like, don't tell us that everything's rosy in the garden and the players are doing great and they're doing the right things and I love them all. And, well, clearly, again, the way that he is, he's not going to come out and blast his players. But I think he has to find now different communication ways of getting over the fact that actually he's not happy and this isn't good enough, if it's not good enough, because I think he's in danger of becoming Chemical Alley style, isn't it? Where there's no war going on, everything's fine, don't worry, it's a lovely day, yeah. Well, really?
But I think the other thing is, for all that stands, Michael Carrick could have the best summer of communication. But if the first 3 games of next season are in a similar style, last 3 games of this season, then the same frustrations very quickly rear their head again. So if Carrick is to stay in post, clearly you need a bright start.
And the first month of next season is going to be massive for that, isn't it? It's going to be absolutely massive. They need, if Carrick is still in charge, they need a good start because it can turn around. Remember how buoyant it was in that first season. He's clearly got coaching abilities. He was able to connect with the fans in that first season, but like you say, a lot of that was because Boro were winning games and playing really attractive football, and everything was great. So yeah, the results. If Carrick is still the manager, the results in the first month of the season will be massive.
And in that first season, it was high intensity. It was fast. You were on the edge of your seat. Well, one of the frustrations, I think, one of the main frustrations of Boro fans has been the fact it's been ponderous, predictable, one pace. So, like, clearly, you're not. Michael Carrick is not going to rip everything up and start again. But it feels like there needs to be a change of approach. It feels like Boro need to have a different plan, have a different approach, because I mean, opposition managers went as close as they possibly could to saying it. They were too predictable.
Which again, to give a little bit of mitigation, is probably where losing Doak was so damaging, because he was the thing that made Boro a little bit different. When he was on the ball, they were doing things that the rest of the team weren't, and Carrick could set his team up in a certain way, knowing that if Boro could get the ball out to Dork, then he would be direct and he would get a shot away and he would tie up opposition defenders. He would get the ball over, all of this. So, losing him was a big, big blow. And I think Boro, when they're going to be recruiting players, do need to think about what type of players they're recruiting and what they want that squad to be. Because I think you're right. I think part of the problem is Dork stood out like an absolute sore thumb. Now, to a certain degree, he's going to, because he's an international class player playing in the Championship. Yeah. So, but Boro having that type of player stood out like a sore thumb, because to a certain extent, a lot of the squad is much of a muchness, isn't it? It's doing the things that Carrick kind of wants his team to do, but isn't actually going to hurt the opposition.
And what about the coach, the Aaron Danks thing, the coaching thing? Now, this is always such a difficult one, because ultimately we don't know.
Yeah.
We're not on the training pitches every day. We don't know what Aaron Danks did and what Graham Carrick does now, and the comparison and how that's had an impact. But what impact has that had, do you think, on?
Well, yeah, I mean, like you say, it's hard to be hard and fast. My gut feeling is it probably has had an impact. I mean, Vincent Kompany and Bayern Munich wanted Aaron Danks. He's gone to Bayern Munich, and by all accounts, and again, this is only from what you hear from people who cover German football and the German media and that, but by all accounts, he's doing a good job there. They're very happy with him. That suggests to me he's a talented coach. He's got to be a talented coach for Bayern Munich to have wanted him to take him there and for him to be settled there and by all accounts be doing a good job. So Boro have lost a very talented coach. Like you say, it's hard to be objective on this, because the easy view is he's Michael Carrick's brother. He's only got the job because he's Michael Carrick's brother. He'll be a yes man. He won't be standing up to Carrick or telling him any hard truths. We don't know if that's true or not. That might be really, really unfair. I've had no dealings with Graham Carrick. I don't know him. Like you say, I don't know what he does. So it's very, very hard to make those judgments. All I would say is that you've removed potentially a world-class coach. And regardless of whether the name's Carrick or not, you've replaced him with someone who was working in Newcastle's academy. Now, is that a like-for-like replacement? I don't think it is. So is there a gap for a senior coaching figure within that coaching team? Jonathan Woodgate, clearly massively important in that group, massively valued by Carrick. You would imagine is a really important bridge between Carrick and the players. Grant Ledbetter clearly developing his coaching abilities, getting more and more experience, now working integrally within the first team group. But is there room there for a more experienced coaching figure? I'd argue there probably is, yes.
And recruitment-wise, clearly it's going to be a big summer, because we looked through the squad last week, I think, and there are various areas, the majority of areas that probably need work. And the kind of suggestion is at this stage that none of the loan players are going to be returning next season. There was clearly a desire to sign Mark Travers on a permanent deal if possible, but he's Bournemouth. He's a Premier League goalkeeper. He's on Premier League wages, which obviously presents the obvious issues. But so you're going to need a goalkeeper. You're going to need a right back if Anthony Dijksteel, regardless. But Anthony Dijksteel, the feeling is he's probably most likely to move on, isn't he, after his contract expires? You're probably going to need one centre back. If Illing Jr. goes and doesn't come back, and Ryan Giles obviously returns, you're going to need a left back. Although you have got Alex Bangura coming back. Midfield, you look short. You've got to replace Dork. You've got a centre forward to sign. So you could go on and on and on. I thought Boro's summer window last summer was as impressive a window as I can remember in recent history. Boro got their top targets. They got a lot of them in early. The squad had us and most people, I think, saying that this squad is capable of winning promotion at the start of the season. In January, it maybe felt like Carrick and Boro went away from what had worked for him. So Carrick was desperate to re-sign Ryan Giles. He obviously wanted to sign George Edmondson as well. Well, the Giles signing just has not worked out. No. The Kelechi Iheanacho signing, which was championed, pushed by Carrick, has turned out to be a disaster. It feels like Boro need to maybe revert back, I think, to the success and what worked for them last summer. Is that fair? And before that?
No, I think that's absolutely fair. I think there's two things there. I think one, you're absolutely bang on. I mean, we thought that the kind of Morgan Rogers type signing was going to be the template for Boro, didn't we? Sign young, whether from within Premier League academies, abroad, whatever, players who you can develop, who you can really improve, who potentially have a big sell-on value. I mean, it's not rocket science. It's kind of the way a lot of championship clubs are going. And yet you're right, the January window, Iheanacho, Giles, those type of signings, they couldn't really have been more different to that. So I think that's something that they need to get their head around and work out what's happening there. I think what you would say is January clearly was a really bad window, but it wasn't a bad window in which Boro wasted the money that they've got for Latalath. So it would have been far worse, I think, if Boro had panic bought and instead of bringing those type of loan players in, signed an Iheanacho type on a 4-year deal where now you're absolutely stuck with him. And that potentially would have crippled Boro for the next 1, 2, 3 seasons. That hasn't happened. So I think what you'd hope is that Boro should have a reasonable pot of money to kind of go to war with this summer, shouldn't they? They obviously, they've made the Rodgers deal, and I mean, that keeps on bringing money in left, right, and centre. I mean, if he goes this summer, goodness me, that's boom time for Boro from Villa. They've got the Latalath money. All right, we know with these things, it's not as simple as you get one big pot of money. It'll be staggered. There'll be add-ons, etc. But Boro financially should be in a stronger position than they've been in previously, certainly in recent windows. So how do they now invest that? And I think you're right. What they need to do is bring in young, hungry players with real potential, but that can be developed and improved and either get Boro in the Premier League or be the next Morgan Rogers that potentially keeps the club on an even keel and gives you the chance to reinvest again in another 12 months time, whatever. I'd like to think that we're not going to see a load more Iheanachos and Ryan Giles coming through the door. Now, that's not to say that loans, clearly Ben Doak, if he'd stayed fit, might have been the difference in getting Boro into the playoffs, might have been the difference in getting them promoted. Boro need to be active in that Premier League loan market. And you'd like to think that there could be another Doak style signing coming through the door late in August. But the bulk of their summer spending will be permanent. That's the way they've always wanted to go if they can. And I think you're right. They need to just get back to what did seem to be working reasonably well.
And I'm sure they will. I'm sure they will.
I'm sure they will.
The power will be back in the recruitment team's hands, transfer-wise, won't it, this summer? Plans will obviously well be in place already, and I'm sure. You only have to look at the evidence of last summer. The Doak signing turned out to be a game changer of a signing, didn't it? Aidan Morris coming in early was an excellent signing. Tommy Conway turned out to be one of the signings of the season. I think that's gone under the radar slightly, really, but he's had a brilliant first season. Missed 10 games. I think only 3 or 4 players scored more. The makeup of the championship next season, then, just to wrap up. So we know the 3 teams that are coming down. We know Birmingham and Wrexham that are coming up. Now, you look at Birmingham and already the suggestions about the type of players. I mean, they've been linked with Mark Travers and the type of money they're going to throw after it. And you immediately think back to Ipswich a couple of years ago and whether they'll be able to go through the leagues.
Well, I don't think it'll happen, but Wrexham were being linked with Vardy the other week.
I was going to say Wrexham surely won't be able to get a 4th successive promotion. But then the teams coming down, we know Southampton, Ipswich, Leicester. In terms of the strength of the league next season, who do Boro want to win the playoffs? Who do Boro want out of the championship?
Probably Sheffield United. Probably Sheffield United, because they're still going to have the residual Premier League money. You'd feel that they would, they're a strong championship squad, and you feel that they would probably get stronger. If Sunderland weren't to make it, then you would imagine that your Joe Bellinghams, your Chris Riggs might well be cherry-picked from there. Coventry and Bristol City, if they stay down there, they'll be good championship teams, but they'll probably be what they're like this season, won't they? I think Sheffield United are the ones who you would imagine if they missed out on the playoffs, you'd be really surprised if they weren't top 6 again next year, real challenges for it. The others you could potentially see dropping away, especially if they were to lose one or two of their kind of star players.
There we go then. Well, our latest offer is running across the bottom of the screen there. If you're watching on YouTube, you can subscribe to The Echo for just a £5 for 5 months or get 40% off an annual subscription, which gets you access to all of our Boro content over the course of the summer. It's ad-free. You've got the page turner app on there as well, so it's well worth your money, even if we say so. That's just a £5 for 5 months. So it'll obviously get you all coverage of what's bound to be an extremely busy Boro summer at Boro.
Let me just jump in here, because I must say, when I was at Coventry at the weekend, there was at least 3 groups of people who came over and said how much they were. This isn't just me blowing our own trumpets here, but saying how much they enjoyed the vids and they liked watching us through the season and stuff. I didn't get your names. I hope you had a safe trip back. It was very early. I know that you had to set off. But thanks for coming over. We love the feedback. We really do. We've enjoyed doing these. We will keep the vids going through the summer. We keep on saying it, but we will hopefully get a few guests on. I'm sure we'll have a couple of live kind of transfery question and answers once things start hotting up a bit. But no, we do appreciate the feedback and the fact that hopefully you've at least half enjoyed what we've been trying to do.
We must start getting names to give us a bit more clout, because there was our Shed 7 fan. That we told our viewers and listeners told us he was a big fan. Now we've got our 3 groups of fans at Coventry.
In the Coventry car park,
Yeah, we must start getting names. I had one actually we've started now, haven't we? What a nice humble way to finish the season.
Exactly,
in the Stack last week, I went to get a pint in the Stack before I was going to see James at the Town Hall, who were class.
Oh, bet they were,
he said, I was watching you. I was watching you this morning on You Are My. I'm sure he had far more fun watching James at the Town Hall.
I'm sure he did. I'm absolutely sure he did.
While we're on the subject of thanking others, Frank Foster, who's
we must say thanks for that.
Our pod, absolute star. If you've been able to tell that our pod, the sound, if you listen on Apple or Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, it sounds much more professional, much more polished, much better. Well, I'd love to say that's all thanks to the handiwork of me and Scott. It's not. That's thanks to Frank, who's been a star helping us out there. So thanks so much to him. And thanks to you for watching and listening over the course of the season. And we will continue throughout the summer. Do subscribe if you haven't already on the YouTube channel. Rate and review on your podcast platforms if you haven't already. Keep in touch with us in the comments. Let us know if there's anything you want us to discuss, any specialist subjects you want us to get stuck into over the course of the summer. And we'll be back next week on You Are My Boro. Take care.